Are you someone who is always striving for perfection? The great Winston Churchill knew the dangers of pursuing perfection and stated, "Perfection is the enemy of progress." We're going to break this down and show you a path out of the perfection trap. Come on, John.
Hold on,
swirl,
man.
dude.
Come
Swirl.
on, man.
John,
I'm
we're
trying to be
doing
perfect.
the show.
I'm trying to be perfect.
Well, fucking you.
Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness.
Hey, well, thank you all for listening and to making the show possible. You know, John and I are solo today, and we're going to break down how perfection is preventing you from personal growth and productivity, how it gets in the way of your relationship, how it messes with your head in all sorts of ways, and how and don't even get me started on how, you know, perfection in social media. Perfection is a trap. John and I are back. What's up, John? Good to be here, man. I love that we're recording another episode.
Same here.
It's great
man.
to be solo, dude.
It is. It's always fun. You know, don't get me wrong. I love our guests, and we've had some phenomenal guests on this season already, and we've got some phenomenal ones lined up coming up. But it's always good just to have some fun with just the two of us. And it's funny, we just spent some time like setting this up and ironically trying to make it perfect. And then both Will and I were like, you know what? Let's just freaking go. Let's make it happen. So here we are, we're recording, and I'll jump in with some quick announcements. So, hey, same thing we've been saying the past few weeks. Hey, you can find out what MTM is up to, what we're doing. You can simply find that out by texting the letters MTM to 33777, or you can check us out on our website, mentalkingmindfulness.com. Couple of things that I do want to bring to your attention is that we have 2 live virtual 9-week meditation courses coming up this fall. One on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern, beginning September 10th, and the second on Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern, which begins October 6th. And again, you can find all that out by texting MTM to 33777 or visit our website at mentalkingmindfulness.com.
Yeah.
All right, I'm actually out of breath just from reading that one paragraph. So
you did a great job, John. It wasn't quite as perfect as I wanted it to be, but it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
Let's start over. All right. So to keep from trying to be perfect, we're going to ground ourselves, and we're going to ground ourselves in this body that we have, this perfect body.
Great idea.
It's perfect in its imperfection, right? But it's perfect. So let's just feel our feet or the seat underneath us, feel where we are being supported, and bring your attention to your breath. Go ahead and exhale, letting it out, feeling empty. Hold empty, nice deep, perfect breath in. Hold at the top and release. And as you release, relax. Now bring some movement back into your body. And here we are, Will and John, Men Talking Mindfulness, to talk about avoiding the perfection trap. Wow, we're going to be so imperfect. We're going to be so perfect at being imperfect today.
I got to say, John, that one breath is really hard when you have a show, you know, like right here, we're live, and to really just be with that breath in its entirety and really ground yourself. That is always a big challenge for me, taking that one breath, you know, but it's really helpful. And actually, you know what, like, I mean, I want, you know, as we were going through just, you know, our announcements and stuff like that and talk about those meditation courses, that's kind of where this idea, this is for me, this is where this idea came from for this episode, because we piloted our first meditation course this year I think we started in March, ended in June or something like that, the 9 weeks. And, you know, as we had like 11 wonderful students that went through the program, mostly men. And as we started getting calmer, right, really using mindfulness and using the practice of meditation to really get calm, all of a sudden, all these narratives, all these ways that people behave and people act in the world started to come to the surface. And we had one student who said, he goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe what a perfectionist I am," and how it really messes with us. And it messes with him, you know, in such a deep way. And you know, it was just boom, like it's just such a unbelievable gift. And now he's really changed quite a bit, even since the course ended in June. And just even that epiphany about like, oh, how perfection is really preventing him from in so many ways, just really having an authentic expression, having a meaning or more meaningful relationships and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, and it's a real trap. It's a real trap. But all that said, why don't we start by, So also what we did in order to prepare for this show, we reached out. We have like a small group of, core group of listeners and community members that we connect with very often. So we reached out to them. We're like, hey, what do you want to know about perfection that we can bring into the show today? And I'm going to quote one of the, John, you're going to read this. One of our students and one of our community members for Men Talking Mindfulness, he wrote us this.
I grew up in a home where perfectionism was the only option. There was never any love shown, only punishments when things weren't perfect according to my parents. I was never good enough, so I ran away from home for the first time in middle school. Where could I go at that age? 1 week after I graduated high school, I packed a bag, left home without telling anyone, and I never looked back. Not knocking my parents, they just did what they knew. And that is a loaded and honest assessment. Thank you for sharing that with us. You know who you are. Lots to unpack there, and we're going to explore, the mental health side of perfectionism. And let's start there, Will. Let's start by laying that foundation, defining perfection, and go from there.
Well, defining perfection, that was kind of fun, John. Like I was like, oh, and here it is. And then another voice comes on, you read the quote. It's like you're reading from a book. It's like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. We're learning here, everybody. We're trying different things. Hey, defining perfection is a multifaceted concept that can be defined in several ways depending on the context. Here are some primary definitions. And I'm taking this straight from Wiki and my AI. So general definitions is state of completeness or flawlessness, right? Perfection is often described as a state of being complete or without any flaws or defects. It represents a high standard of excellence and is considered an ideal condition. And that's a key word right there, ideal condition, right? Not, condition, I just think we're idea, it comes from the head, where everything is exactly right. And acting of perfecting, perfection can also refer to the process of making something perfect or better, right? So maybe improvement is good, but like when you're constantly refining and chipping away a little this or a little that, there's obsession is part of this too, in a lot of ways, and paralysis as well if you're stuck. Sure. And this involves continuous improvements and refinement to achieve this flawless, essentially unattainable state. What's that? Ontology and ethics, right? So in philosophy and ethics, perfection can refer to. I know. Perfection can refer to, again, an ideal mode, such as a perfect being or a perfect life, which lacks a nothing and fulfills its purpose completely. So that's this is perfect life. That brings you right into social media. Everyone's trying to put out their perfect life, and so we're going to talk about that. But I thought, how about some quotes here? Let's go back and forth with these, John.
Okay.
We already did the Winston Churchill. Once again, perfection is the enemy of progress.
Yeah, and then one that's very similar, and I think you guys have all heard this or something very similar, is perfect is the enemy of good. And I've told people that when they're working on a project and they're like, let me just make one more tweak, let me just do one more thing. Like, you're going to end up screwing it up because you're trying so hard to make it perfect. It's good. Submit it as it is. Put it out there. There's for entrepreneurs, there's a saying that if you wait until your product is perfect, then you've waited too long. That's what we did with our show. If we waited until our show was perfect, we wouldn't even have a show. Perfect is the enemy of good, and that's Voltaire.
Yeah, and that's one of the most badass names ever. Like what's your name? Voltaire. It's like, goddamn, dude. It's well. Here's another quote. I love that. I've always loved that. So this is by David Foster Wallace. He says, "Perfection is very dangerous because, of course, if your fidelity to perfectionism is too high, you never do anything." So that's again coming back to that, just paralysis, like just you're not wanting to just put your best foot forward, not giving a crap what it looks like or how you're being perceived, and just doing the best you can, with where you are, with what you know.
And
go ahead.
This one hurts. Perfectionism is not a quest for the best. It is a pursuit of the worst in ourselves, the part that tells us that nothing we do will ever be good enough. Julia Cameron, right? That one stings.
Yeah, big time, and that's probably from The Artist's Way. And I know, my origin story, and I've mentioned The Artist's Way many times. It changed my life, and it really because what's great about Julia Cameron and what she writes about most often is creativity and what it takes to be a creative person. And you're never going to take the necessary creative risks if you're stuck in perfection or want to continually pursue perfection. Just like you said, like this is a creative experience right here, and creative expression, what we're doing in this show all the time. And if we just always are waiting for everything to be right, the timing to be right, all the equipment to be perfect, again, we'd be sitting on the fence and wondering why everyone else is excelling in their podcasts and we're still haven't even launched our first episode.
Exactly.
And another piece here is this whole and this is like one of the core, the essence of where a lot of this perfection is built on something, right? It's not just it is a way of being, but this way of being develops because it's built on an emptiness of I'm not enough or I'm not good enough.
Right.
And I think that was, as we're going through this research, this kept showing up over and over and over again, because if perfection essentially becomes more of a defense mechanism, instead of really in the defense mechanism in the place of trying to grapple with this whole idea that I'm enough. So we kind of put on this whole suit, this armor, if you will, or this fake self of everything is perfect, I'm perfect, and you should be perfect too. When really what we're doing and running from is this whole idea, and what's deeper inside of us is I'm not enough, and trying to fill that void with something, or instead of dealing with that void, right, putting perfection as a way of being instead of being who we are, which essentially, as we dig into those layers of why do I feel this way, of I'm not enough, you're going to start answering those questions, and it could be really ugly. And that's why this hits home so hard.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, I know we have a whole lot of other quotes here. Let's read one more another by Julia Cameron, because it's tied.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to read that one.
Yeah, please. That last one, because it's tied exactly to what you just said.
Yeah. Perfectionism is a refusal to let yourself move ahead. It is a loop, an obsessive, deliberately closed system that causes you to get stuck in the details. Right. That's Julia Cameron again.
Yeah.
She's brilliant. I mean, she's a writer, wrote movies and stuff. So she knows how perfection has gotten in the way. And we wouldn't be having these quotes if she, wasn't, if she got stuck in all the details.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Let's move. So we've got the definition. We've got some really powerful quotes there. Let's talk about, how does striving for perfectionism, how does that harm our minds, or I guess rather, how does it harm us professionally, mentally, in our relationships, in our creativity? How does it harm us? Obviously, we've all heard the saying, practice makes perfect. And then you've heard the additional saying on top of that, perfect practice makes perfect. Well, we all know that nothing is perfect, right? I've got 3 young children, and my oldest, she is very much wrapped up in perfectionism. And I know that comes from myself. It comes from my wife. We're both perfectionists, me more so than my wife. My wife is very much a creative, and she's able to get past that analysis paralysis that so many perfectionists have. I am not. I often get wrapped up in it, and I don't get started with something. Well, my oldest kid is that way too. And I keep telling her, hey, that there's no such thing as perfection. Perfection isn't real. It doesn't exist. You can't do things perfectly. We went to the soccer field, and she was kicking a ball, and I was like, here, kick it along this line. And I meant loosely along this line, right?
Yeah.
in that direction of this line on the soccer field. And she like lines up perfectly and she kicks the ball and it barely goes off the line. And she's like, it got off the line. I'm like, well, sweetheart, it's okay. You kicked it in the direction of the line, right? Anyway, I say all that to say that perfection is unrealistic. Yet so many of us strive to get there. And no matter how hard we try, there's always going to be room for improvement. And this is where the math major in me comes out.
Right.
I don't know if you guys, if the listeners remember limits, but basically the representation of a limit that I was taught in calculus is, hey, like if I from this point, there's a wall over here in front of me. If I walk from here halfway to that wall, okay, now I walk halfway. Okay, now I walk another halfway. You will actually theoretically never get to that wall. Well, that's how perfectionism is there's always room for improvement, but we get into this, what did you call it earlier from Julia Cameron, debilitating closed system. That debilitating closed system, we're always going to have this sense of failure. And sorry, man, I'm dorking out on this one.
No, roll, dude, roll. I love it.
You know, in track and field, you have all these field events where there's a jumper, right? You've got high jump, you've got the pole vaulter. And I've always been kind of in awe of those events. One, because you got to be a little crazy to go, 13, 14, 15, however many feet up in the sky on a pole that could break. But secondly, like every single one of those events eventually ends in failure. Eventually, right? So eventually you're going to get to your personal best, and then the next level, you're going to knock that pole down. And that's what perfectionists can't grasp, is eventually you're going to have a failure, and then you're going to feel inadequate because of it. And so we have to understand that perfectionism is unattainable. We're not going to, as this pole vaulter or high jumper, continue to go higher and higher and higher and higher, until we reach the heavens, right? We're going to have a failure, and we in life are going to have failures, and we're going to have a failure constantly if we're trying to achieve perfectionism. It's constant failure.
Yeah, and and also we've defined failure over and over and over. I know I have on the show. We both have. It's like it is a learning opportunity,
right?
I got a chance to actually listen to Stephen A. Smith. God, what's up my freaking language? Stephen A. Smith speak right at some event, and he was this man's mind is so clear. I want to listen to him more because he is A game and right now, Stephen A. Like he is really hitting the peak of his he's been in the realm this for 20 some years. He says, "I always win." And we're, everyone's like, what? And he's like, I always win because either like I'm winning the argument or I learned something. And I was like, wow, dude. Powerful, right? Powerful to process the world that way. If you're not learning things, right. And not, and just learning this one, the biggest first essential piece about perfection is it's unattainable. It's going to lead to burnout. And this is another thing that's really going to hurt us mentally is burnout. I mean, it's going to lead to depression, chronic dissatisfaction, and self-criticism, right? When this is like how it begins to lead to this burnout. Low self-esteem, so that's lower confidence. It's stemming from a persistent belief that you are not good enough. Here it is again, right? That whole narrative that sits in the background. I think it's like, it's no wonder why one goes to the next, because if you're always trying to achieve something that is completely unattainable and have this excessively high standards, for yourself in some way, it's just not only going to mentally exhaust you, but it's going to physically exhaust you because of all that, all those stress hormones running in your body. It's going to mess with your sleep. Burnout is definitely, not a friend of sleep. And you're going to live in this constant pressure, with the results that you're trying to strive for. And, it's just going to get you deeper into depression. And then what happens when we're in those states? Like we don't want to feel that way. So we get out numb. So we're drinking, we're doing things that we've talked about many times here, that is not in favor and aligned with where I want to go. And a lot of that is perfection getting in the way.
Right. And that, that burnout, that attempt to be perfect, what that does, it stresses you out, like you said. But then you carry that stress into your relationships, and because you're striving to be perfect, you expect other people to strive to be perfect. And if they're not meeting your standards of perfection, what does that do? That creates some type of contempt, and that will drive a wedge between people. And that could be, between a romantic relationship. It could be between parents and children, as we were reading that quote before. That can really destroy relationships. So yes, we've got the mental health side to it, but that mental health side also has a personal side. What does it do to your personal relationships? What does it do to your professional relationships, right? If you're a boss, like some of the people that I work with have this perfectionist attitude. And just to be clear, there's no judgment here. I am a perfectionist as well, and I have to work very hard to avoid this perfection trap myself. But when you are a leader, how can you delegate to your people if you are a perfectionist? How can you trust your people if you are a perfectionist?
That's a really great point right there.
It breaks your personal relationships, and it can break your professional relationships.
And I'd also say without micromanaging, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right? Exactly. Right.
Right.
So, and this comes to, I'm actually going to sing one of my best frenemies. So friendly enemies, Andy Reese, who we've had on the show before.
What's up, Andy? And actually, I gotta say, I'm gonna buy tickets to go see an Army game here at West Point. Just so you know, but I love John.
Oh, dude,
and it's
come to Washington, D.C. and come to the Army-Navy football game. I'm going. Hey, everybody, Army-Navy football game this year in D.C.
John, if you can get me a ticket next to you, man.
I don't know if I can get them. Actually,
okay. Well, just long as we can tailgate and hang out. If I could be with all the crazy Navy motherfuckers and Army people, I'm around this like Andy Rise energy. I would love to be there.
All right. Well, we'll see if Andy can come.
Anyway, we'll figure that out.
Yeah. So anyway, where was I? Oh, so Andy, he recently went out on a scouting trip with a bunch of kids, and they went to this island. And, as he is a scout leader, he's with the scouts. He gets up in the morning, and the kids make breakfast, and they burned the pancakes. They burned them. And Andy put out this really good post saying, "Let them burn the pancakes." Oh. And that post actually really resonated with me this weekend. My little boy, he's 5, he wanted to help me make some cinnamon rolls. And I, put him on the pan, and, obviously I'm not letting him get very close to the hot oven. But I was like, okay, how long should we put them in there? And, I showed him the numbers and everything. And we ended up burning them. And I was like, okay, what can we learn from this? But I let him burn it. I let him fail, right? And it was because of Andy's post, "Let them burn the pancakes." And I think that's something that we have to do as leaders, is we have to let our people burn the proverbial pancakes. What are they? Obviously, they're not burning real pancakes, but they're going to screw up. But you have to allow, like we talked about, failure is where you learn. You have to allow your people to fail so that they can learn. And the only way they're going to fail is if you're not micromanaging, if you're not holding their hands the whole time. And in failing, they're not going to meet your standards at times, and that's okay. But they're growing, and eventually they will. They'll meet your standards and sometimes even surpass them. So
even in both of those cases, John, whether you're leading people or whether you're leading your son, in how to cook some delicious cinnamon rolls, right? I know. My dad loves those things, dude. Like, anyway. In both of these cases, right, what you're modeling by doing this, you're modeling, hey, it's okay to take a risk. It's okay to fail. It's okay, to not be. And this is one of the biggest things that as we're going through this and as everyone that's listening could probably experience this, or maybe you're waking up to the fact that this is where, like, if you're a perfectionist, you are you unwillingness to fail because you're perfect is keeping you from actually learning anything, from actually showing up authentically in any situation. It's you're putting up a fake self instead of being your authentic self. And we've said, and we've experienced, and we do it in real time right here all the time. Authenticity is super powerful,
right?
And it's a great connector to you and other people, and also to you and your creativity when you let go of that perfection. So lots to unpack there, and modeling it. That's a great thing, John, as far as a leader, to model failure, in the sense of obviously you're doing your best, but then also in modeling that failure, shifting into learn it all mode, right? And then maybe even like speaking to how you're learning from this failure, that can change the entire office. It could change your family, right? It can change your relationship to yourself, ultimately, is where it starts, right? But
if you change the culture in an organization, which, culture, what is it? The saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you can change the culture in your office or your workspace to a positive culture where it's not a no fail kind of mentality. Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand there are times when there's no fail. Like if you're on a submarine, I don't want a submarine failing, right? I don't want an airplane. Right. I don't want an airplane falling out of the sky and then people learning from that. Now, granted, they do, but I certainly don't want to be on an airplane where they're learning from that. Anyway, the idea, you understand the idea behind what Will and I are saying is if you're constantly drumming home the no fail, it's going to degrade trust. But then two, people are going to just hide their failures. They're going to fail, and then they're going to say, oh, we got that deadline. We met that deadline. Yes, we did that task. And then ultimately that's going to lead to a failure anyway, and potentially a more catastrophic failure. So,
yeah. No, I mean, I think as far as a no fail operation, obviously failure obviously can happen because we live in a reality where Murphy's Law is real, right?
Yeah.
But what do you do and also this is what's in the literature, what we're talking about here, in order to, instead of striving for perfection, excellence. And how do we begin to attain excellence is by practice. So before you go out on a mission, that you have no fail opportunity. It's like one and done, I'd imagine, right? You practice, you rehearse, you go again and again and again and again, to striving for excellence, not perfection, right? And so when real time comes and you're in that mission, you're doing the best you can because you're prepared. Is that how it all works?
100%. I mean, that's one of the things that we do within the special operations community and everyone really within the military is we do rehearse to mitigate and minimize failure. We're still going to have failure, and we even have what we call branches and sequels within our planning. Hey, if we fail at this part, then what? If then. So that it's all part of our planning, but ultimately it helps to mitigate failure. But let's move on from that piece. Talking about failure, we've got the kind of the analysis paralysis because you were scared, right? That fear of failure. And when I say failure, I don't just mean, hey, you didn't do well. It's that you didn't do perfectly, right? And we've already talked about perfect isn't real. There's no such thing as
it's perfect. An ideal. It's an ideal. It's an idea.
Yeah, exactly. And then so now we have this fear of imperfection, and I talk about that in some of my talks because I've had fear of imperfection, and that has caused me to, funny enough, fail. Not only did I not do well, but I actually did. I had an epic failure, and I've spoken on that on the show before.
Yeah, the riding tide, right? Yes, riding the tide onto the thing. Exactly. I was waiting for the perfect wave.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. I was waiting for the perfect wave, man. And it caused me to get physically punished, but I had my men right beside me in training getting physically punished as well because I had a fear of failure, a fear of imperfection. But that fear of imperfection, it causes us to do that analysis paralysis, but then it also diminishes our productivity within the office. So we talked about, the professional things that it does. Yeah. It diminishes trust, it diminishes the ability to delegate, but it also diminishes productivity because we have this excessive time where we're just thinking about the task, right? And we did an episode not too long ago about procrastination. A lot of that procrastination comes from a fear of just getting started, right? So that that diminished productivity is a huge piece of this of the perfection trap.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's keep going. I mean, here's some more questions from our audience that we tied all the research together with these questions because it's like this is what people are feeling. This is what people are thinking. So we thought this would be the best way to serve. Right. So how can I identify the signs of perfectionism in one's behavior and thinking patterns?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think some of the things that we've talked about already, if you've ever sat down and you're like, you know what, I want to start a business. I want to invent something. I want to write a book. I want to, make some music, or I want to be an artist. And then you're like, you know what, I can't do that because I will never be perfect. If you're constantly setting those excessively high standards, and then when you set those excessively high standards, you don't meet them. Obviously, you can't. Then what do you feel? And if you feel disappointed when you don't meet that, I think that's one of the first signs of being a perfectionist.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, and then the feeling of disappointment that comes in and all that, it's like,
sure.
And it's just like, that's like, what else do we have here? Procrastination due to fear is not meeting unrealistic expectations. We've already kind of went through that. Difficulty delegating task as well. I mean, other people cannot meet the standards. So like, and it's just like signs of perfection in one's behavior and thinking. Micromanaging, we talked about earlier. I'd also say in behavior and thinking is extreme criticism to other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's not the way I would do it. Or like, it's like, oh, is that the way you're going to cut the cucumbers? I'm like, they're fucking cucumbers, dude. You know what I mean? Right. It's like, does it have to, people that are very, and just imagine in that paradigm, if they're that critical of other people, how incredibly critical they are themselves.
Right.
And overly, critical self-talk by being harsh on oneself. And all or nothing thinking is another one.
I'm guilty of that one big time. Like when I get into, hey, you know what, I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to get into this new exercise routine. And the first day I'll eat like nothing but spinach and grilled chicken. And, I might do that for a week. And then that's the all. And I might hit the gym and crush my soul for 2 hours. That's the all. And then like suddenly something will come up at work, or, the kids, my schedule will get thrown off and I can't eat perfectly and I can't work out perfectly. So what do I do? Because I can't do perfect, I go the other way, all the way to the other extreme. Now I'm going to eat this freaking gallon of ice cream with a full-size pizza and wash it down with a large beer.
Fill the void, right? You're filling the void. I'm not enough.
That's right. Yeah. So may as well numb the pain with some eating, and then I might have time to work out for 20 minutes, but that's not enough. So I'll waste that 20 minutes scrolling on social media when I could have done 20 minutes of push-ups or 20 minutes of squats or something. Yeah. That it's not that all or nothing. Life is not all or nothing. We have to make everything a dial, and dial it up when we can and dial it down when we can. Don't turn it on and off. It's not that switch, right?
Yeah. This next one, as far as how people would behave around perfection, and I see this a lot. I mean, hey, you men out there, like, let me know if you're going to relate to this. And I see this in the yoga room all the time: avoiding new experiences, right? And this is like very masculine. And until recently, there's a lot more men showing up at the yoga studio here in New York.
That's awesome.
I only teach like 2 studio classes a week, but I've been teaching, all the time since like basically 2012. In the beginning, out of a class of say, 40 people, there'd be like maybe 4 dudes, right? And a lot of men are just like, oh, well, I can't do yoga because I'm not good at it, is what though. I've never done it before. And I'm just like, well, how, I mean, if you're going to want to get good at anything, you're going to have to take those first steps, and you're going to have to overcome first get over your perfection, because like you can't be Beethoven the first time you sit down at the piano. It's just not possible. No, it's just not possible.
No, dude, I got another story for you based on that.
Yeah, go for it. I love your story. John, story time with John, everybody. Anyway.
My poor kids, one day they're going to listen to this episode and they're like, Dad, you're such a sellout. But hey, we're staying, right now we're in between homes. We just sold one home and we've got another house being built. So we're staying at this Airbnb, and this Airbnb has a piano in it. And, of course, the kids gravitate to this piano and they like just start slamming away on the keys. And within like 5 minutes, my little boy's getting frustrated because he's not playing this beautiful song. I'm like, son, when have you ever had lessons? When has anybody ever shown you how to play the piano? And he's like, never, but they're never going to, because I just don't know how. And I'm like, buddy, come on, buddy. You're not going to be good when you've never even had anybody show you how. And kids, they're certainly not my kids alone. Kids in general, people in general. I know I ski, and I'm not very good at it. I mostly ski the greens and sometimes the blues, and very rarely go down the blacks. But I have fun with it. I have a lot of fun with it because I eventually stepped up and I was, you know what, I'm going to learn how to ski. But a lot of people I know will never ski because they're afraid of looking like an idiot. They're afraid of looking like an idiot on the hill. They're afraid of what other people will think. And I think that's where a lot of this perfectionism comes in, is how do we view ourselves? Actually, it's not even how we view ourselves. It's how we think others are perceiving us, right?
Yeah, no shit. And also, if I may just say one thing,
please.
Like also the fact that, just think how self-centered the thinking is.
Yeah.
Like that everybody around you, right, is watching you, number one, and really gives a shit about how you fall on your ass when you ski.
That's right.
Right.
And most of the time they don't, right? And that's the thing.
Right.
It's not their perception of you, and it's not your perception of yourself. It's your perception of their perception that keeps you from doing things. So that's tied to what we can talk about later, is social media. Right? Like, how do we perceive others perceive us? Avoiding those new experiences. Oh man, fear of failure, fear of imperfection, but also fear of other people's perception, or rather our perception of their perception, has kept so many people from doing new experiences.
And that might come down from a deeper place where at one point in your life you might have been extremely embarrassed, and embarrassment is like, it's awful for the human condition when you really feel embarrassed.
You remember
it's awful. It's awful. It is. I've really embarrassed myself in the past, and I have. But and I did it a lot in the acting realm. Like, I had some awful experiences when I was auditioning or going for plays or doing readings. I was literally, I'm surprised in some of those moments that I didn't have like a full-on panic attack.
Yeah.
It was just so oh my God, this is just. It was like you just want to crawl in a hole. But when you expose yourself to that over and over and over again, and really putting your best foot forward with where you are, and when you also do that, regardless of what you're trying to do, by you showing up and say like a group of men or any group, and you're the first one willing to, one of my acting coaches said is like, hey, if you're going to fall on your face, you might as well get a bloody nose. And I love that. Because just fuck it, just go and do it and jump in and see what happens. You watch how, if you're in a group setting like that and you're doing the best you can and authentically, other people start to light up with their authenticity, with their best foot forward, because you're tapping in to what is the common humanity that we all share, is we're essentially flawed. And again, perfection isn't ideal and is not the way things are. It's not the way things the way that you want things to be, right? And this is why meditation is so important, and mindfulness, and just become more mindful. The way that you want things to be, and this is the Buddhist, this is suffering, and the way that you do things are never going to match, right? Your expectations of how the world should be and how you actually go about in pursuit, and then the results that you get, they're never going to match. And if you're always trying to compare those two things, because you're in this perfection trap, then you're always going to be suffering, and you're always going to be avoiding new experiences because, you're unwilling to try because you think you're so freaking important or something, it's like,
or have a desire to be important, which actually brings me to another point, which isn't really exactly tied to what we're speaking about here.
Yeah.
I've been guilty of this, and I recently saw a video of one of my really good buddies, Brad Geary. He's a soon-to-be retiring Navy SEAL captain. He's served for forever. Unfortunately, he's being kind of drugged through the dirt. And I won't get into details, but if you look up Brad Geary on the internet, you'll see what's up. Anyway, he was just on the Sean Ryan show, which his episode comes up next week with Sean Ryan, and they did a little preview for him this week. And in that, Brad says, I was talking to a friend, and he said, I will never leave this command. I will never leave what I'm doing because I'm addicted to feeling important. And then Brad said, and that's me. And when Brad said that, I was like, well, shit, that's me. I have this addiction to feeling important. And if I can't do things perfectly, then I feel as though I am not important. I mean, that transparency, that's one of the reasons I became a SEAL. I wanted to have some validation for who I was. I wanted to have a purpose. And I didn't want to just be average or vanilla, as some people use.
Mediocre.
I don't want to be mediocre. When there's, I mean, shit, when you really boil it down to it, there's really not much wrong with being mediocre. Mediocre is the middle.
Okay.
But I mean,
average.
Probably be average is a better term. I like being, I like striving for excellence. I like I like feeling important. But that can also lead to some of this perfectionism, which, kind of can bring us to the next part of what we're talking about is, what's some of the common causes of perfectionism, and then how can we explore those to avoid, like the title says of our show, avoid this perfection trap.
I don't know, where should we begin with this? What are some common root causes of perfectionism and someone?
Well, I mean,
and how can someone explore them? Yeah, jump in. Yeah,
I'll start. My parents, I love my parents to death, and they've done a phenomenal job raising 5 kids. I have 3 older sisters and a younger brother, and I think they did a phenomenal job. But one thing is that they really praised us for good work, which I'm not saying they should not have done. But what that did in me, what that built in me was, I have to do good work to get praise. Now they did not blast me or anything for doing average work, or even sometimes having a failure here or there. They didn't destroy my soul for that. But what they did do was they built me up every single time I did well, whether that was on the track, whether it was in the classroom, whether it was in the band playing the trombone, which I think Will and I have in common, if I remember correctly.
No way, my God, I can't believe you brought that up. We do. That's funny. We both played the fucking trombone. I forgot. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I get, if I did really well, then I got praise. And I think that's a lot of us, if you go back and read the 5 love languages, I bet that perfectionists are the ones who seek words of affirmation. And I was always, and I still continue to this day, I'm seeking words of affirmation. Hey, John, Will, you guys did great on this episode. Hey, thanks. That built me up. Hey, thanks for doing a good job, doing whatever. I mean, shit, it could be, thank you for doing the dishes, right? You did a great job cleaning the dishes. All right. Well, that's praise, and I'm built up by that. So I think that a lot of it is built up by our upbringing, and then if you go into the 5 love languages and you assess which one is yours, if your love language is the words of affirmation, I would bet money that you're a perfectionist.
This is a good point, right? Because you're like, there's that outside validation, right? Which definitely leads into more social media, and that whole thing. I think what also is important to mention here is Brene Brown. She describes, because we're looking at the roots, right? Getting to the base. Brene Brown, who's just absolutely brilliant. She describes perfection as shame, right? Based fears of not feeling enough.
Yeah.
I mean, that's deep. That goes, that's the core, right? So it comes from a deep sense of shame. Shame could I'm not a shame expert. I'm not a psychologist or a therapist at all. Just everyone knows that, and John isn't either. But we do know some of this. We do have our experiences.
Stayed at the Holiday Inn Express last night.
Yeah, exactly. So therefore, I'm a fucking expert. I'm just kidding, right? No shame in that. I'm just kidding. Right. So so where's that shame coming from? But go ahead, John.
Well, with Brene Brown, if our listeners have never watched Brene Brown on Netflix or her 1 hour special, it's all about.
I have not.
It's all about vulnerability and strength and how they're really tied to one another. But she talks about she was going to go do a TED talk. And on the way to the TED talk, she changed her mind at the last second about what she wanted to talk about. And I forget what the original topic was, but the topic that she switched to was vulnerability, shame, strength. And she does this phenomenal TED talk, which I also highly recommend checking out. And afterwards, she goes home and, she goes to sleep. Her husband wakes up early and he jumps online to see what people are saying about this phenomenal TED talk. And people are like commenting about, hey, she should eat less. She's, how can you expect to listen to somebody who can't take care of themselves? She's too fat. And the husband, yeah, right. I know. Unbelievable.
People do. These are the perfectionist motherfuckers out there that are criticizing everybody else. And at the same time, they're just imagine that hole inside of them.
Right.
If someone's putting their best foot forward, doing the best they can, right? And everyone's tearing them down. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no. And then, so Brene gets up and her husband is leaving for work. And he says, don't read the comments. He says, don't read the comments. Right. And of course, somebody telling you don't read the comments, what does that do? It drives you to, hey, read the comments. So she goes over, he's leaving in the car. She's like peeking through the blinds to see that he's gone. And she goes back immediately, opens up the TEDx or TED Talk, not TEDx. And what does she do? Goes right to the comments and reads these terrible things. And she starts to feel just destroyed inside. And now she feels that she can't be perfect. Well, that's that shame. She felt shame based on fears of not feeling enough. Right. That's her quote. Brene Brown describes perfection as shame-based fears of not feeling enough. Luckily, Brene Brown is who she is. And I'll stop here real quick. If you don't know who Brene Brown is, look her up. Read her books. Watch anything by Brene Brown. It is gold. Huge fan.
For real.
But that's another thing. What is perfection? Perfection is so subjective, right? We could stand up there and have this perfect TED talk and we think, oh man, we nailed it. I was perfect. And then somebody's going to criticize us for being fat. Or we're going to do this perfect TED talk and we're going to have a perfect body because we've spent so much time eating right and working out, but then we're going to have the wrong color clothes on, right? People are always going to find reasons to criticize us. So we have to understand people criticize us. People criticize our show. Hey, your sound was off. Hey, you guys do this. Hey, you guys could do that. And I understand that. Some of them is constructive criticism. And there's a difference between constructive criticism and just beating us up. But hey, we have to understand that no matter what we do, people are going to criticize us from a point of fear for themselves, right? They have their own fear. They have their own shame. And so to make themselves feel better, they are going to shame us, right?
Hurt people.
Hurt people. That's right.
You know what I mean? And if they're hurting deep on the inside, right, they have that void, they have that I'm not good enough feeling going on the inside that really dictates so much of their behavior and everything that they do. And perfection is just one expression, right, of this void and this deep idea that you're not good enough. Then, you're just going to try to go out and, what do they say? Also misery loves, I know, our cliche and everything, John. misery loves company.
That's right.
Right. They're miserable. They want to tear you down. Right. So at least they can be like, oh, well, or maybe that's their way of trying to get to some sort of common humanity from a deep, hurtful place by tearing other people down and be like, oh, now you're just like me.
Yeah.
Or now I feel better about myself because hopefully you feel as shitty as I do right now. Like it's rough. And this is like, we see this play out in social media very often. I mean, I think it was, during the first, the 2016 election, like, Trump basically broke Facebook. Like Facebook, all the comments, all like people going back and forth and tearing each other apart, and all of a sudden just stopped. It was just like nobody stopped. It was just like, I remember someone commenting, it's like, does anyone get on Facebook anymore? Like, we're just the vitriol and the hate was just so deep, and the division and like was just so awful and dirty, and it's just like childish, and it's like, wow. And that's just coming from, instead of like being mature, talking about things, like, realizing that we have so much in common, and
here we are 8 years later in basically the same pit.
Yeah, I mean, what has changed, right? I mean, it's like, but it's also, I think but this whole idea of perfection, we keep seeing this ideal of perfection being like presented to us through media, continually through social media, right? And then it's like, and then we're very much a part of what we consume on a regular basis, right? And sadly, social media was designed in order to connect you with people, right? And then we post embarrassing photos about you on campus or whatever. It started as like a college thing, right?
Yeah.
And here it is being used to manipulate you, to pull more money out of your pocket, right? To buy shit that you don't need, to fill that void of I'm not good enough deep on the inside. And then how does that create? What kind of behavior does that create in the individual, which and then works its way into society? Is like, oh, I'm on vacation, look at my car, look at the boat, like, oh, I'm going on a trip, whatever. I don't know. It's like, you know what I mean? It's just like all these, expressions of emptiness. It's just like, I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's a mess, John. I mean, I mean, mindfulness and meditation really, really helped, and helps tremendously. Anyone who wants to practice, to deconstruct this idea of perfection and how it's a false trap. I mean, it's just a complete trap.
Yeah. Well, I want to come back to that social media piece.
Yeah.
Granted, social media has its pluses, but it's definitely got its really negative sides. I just finished reading The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And it's by the same author who wrote The Coddling of the American Mind. Both fantastic reads. But anyhow, in The Anxious Generation, he shows how in 2013, I forget what year it is, I want to mess that up, but basically the smartphone, that definitely started adding to depression and anxiety. But then when the front-facing camera and Instagram came out, there was this huge spike in stress and anxiety, specifically among teenage girls, because they were comparing themselves to these other girls that they see on Instagram, which are those pictures. So many of them are doctored up, filters, airbrushed to appear perfect. And then these girls, they're comparing themselves to this goal, this unattainable perfection, and that's making them sick. And then on the men's side, there's also a study with the social media, but also it actually ends up being more about pornography for young men and what that does to your stress and anxiety. But I also want to come back to this quote, and funny enough, it's from Fight Club, and it's we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. And that right there is that is social media in a quote, right? And it's not just about buying things; it's about doing things, right? We're doing so many things in our lives to impress people that we don't like. We work jobs that we don't like so that we can have, clout, so that we can have importance. Comes back to being important, or being seen as important, perceived as important. So that's social media, man. If you haven't read The Anxious Generation, check it out. I think all parents should read it. All young children, Gen Z, read it or listen to it. But learn about the dangers of social media. Yes, again, there's positive sides to it. I mean, it was originally created to connect with folks, but it can be very toxic. But I'll get off that soapbox.
No, it's all good. It's manipulative.
It is.
And like, look, go ahead, John. Sorry.
No, it's just I was saying, it is manipulative, and then it's used. Funny enough, the algorithms actually are focused on building negative thoughts, right? Which adds to insecurities, that feeling of it being inadequate, and then that feeling of being a failure. That deep-seated fear of inadequacy and failure.
I think we're going to look back, or someday, or there's going to be regulations, hopefully in the very near future, where social media is going to be treated like smoking. You know what I mean? It's just fucking destructive, like so incredibly destructive, and it's really destroying us in so many ways. I mean, so many ways. It's like
they should have classes on how to use social media responsibly.
Well, I think we should also have like fiduciary algorithms that really help to serve the betterment and health and mental well-being of human beings. Like, why not do something like that instead of like, should
promote our show? Like, Men Talking Mindfulness should be on it.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to these guys, because they know what they're talking about, and then buy everything that they have. I'm just kidding. But, very true. Very true. But like, what is it like? Let me just say, as far as social media, once again, it's like there's two industries that call their consumers users, right? And they are drug dealers and social media. And just keep that in mind every time that you plug into social media, with that dopamine trip that's trying to, get you to manipulate. It's just manipulating your behavior. That's right. Like, it's real. So let's
talk about getting off the soapbox of social media. What can people do for that? Like, I think addressing it in therapy is good. We'll talk about obviously we'll talk about mindfulness, and I want to talk about self-compassion, how that can play into overcoming this. Yeah. But I think we really need to understand the root causes of that, and that can come through therapy, self-reflection, journaling, that type of thing. Where do we want to go from here?
Well, I mean, meditation as well. I mean, there's so many, like, I would be like, hey, how do you change your relationship to social media? You know what I mean? Maybe just start by turning off those, those notifications, push notifications, right? All right, so here's another question from our audience. How can someone differentiate between healthy striving for excellence and unhealthy perfection? And this is like really the way out of the trap, right? Instead of trying to live up to this unattainable ideal, this idea, this thought in your head, right, of what things should exactly look like, be like, feel like, be expressed, whatever it is, to let go of that. And then how can striving, what does it mean to really strive for excellence? I think that would be a good place to start. So, so setting healthy striving for excellence be like setting realistic goals, right? But also knowing as you walk towards that goal of like, maybe your son wants to start to play piano, right? Set a realistic goal. It's like learn your scales, first, right? And like, and then be proficient at that. Seeing mistakes as learning opportunities and taking pride in your progress. Like, this is healthy striving, right? And this is like, and excellence, we actually have a little chart down here. I thought that'd be good to kind of break down, the difference between perfection and excellence, right? Striving for excellence aims to achieve the best possible outcome within realistic limits, focusing on growth and improvement. Whereas striving for perfection, seeking a flawless, error-free outcome, often with unrealistic standards, right? Mindset, growth-oriented, valuing progress and learning from mistakes. And whereas the mindset of perfection is excellence. This strive for excellence. Yes, right. Fixed mindset is perfection, right? And your fear of making mistakes and viewing yourself as even a failure. Goals, right? High but achievable standards, emphasizing continuous improvements is what excellence is. And then on the other side, with perfection, right? The goal is unrealistic and often unattainable standards seeking absolute flawlessness. I mean, it's just not like nothing's flawless. Like, I mean, it's just not how we are as human beings. Excellence, when you're approaching mistakes, it's like sees mistakes as opportunity for learning and growth. I mean, of course, whereas if you're a perfection person stuck in the trap, views mistakes as unacceptable and signs of failure. And impact on emotional health, right? Excellence, generally positive, right? Fostering, Mr. John McCaskill, fostering resilience, right? Mr. Will Schneider, fostering self-compassion, right? And, and overall leading to motivation, right? And, and then on the other side, as far as the way perfection works, the impact on mental health, often negative, leading to anxiety, stress, and low self-esteem. Productivity, we kind of talked about. Self-evaluation, excellence. You're balanced, recognizing both strengths and areas of improvement because it's a constant refinement. It's a constant refinement, and you're actually willing to try and do because you need to have something that you are refining. So you must be refining the results that you just produced by the efforts that you just put forth, right? Whereas like perfection and self-evaluation, harsh and critical, focusing on flaws and shortcomings. There's a flexibility as well that comes with striving for excellence, adaptable, right? Willing to adjust goals and methods as needed. Where on the other side, as far as flexibility, there is no flexibility when it comes to perfection because you're rigid, adhering to strictly the initial standard or the plan. Like, and you just even think of that, John, when you're working with somebody like that, it's like, no, it's got to be this way. I'm brilliant. Every plan I come up with is absolutely perfect, and that's where we're going to go. And that can really create a very harmful situation or outcome for people. Sure. Depending on what's going on. And I think there's one more here. So outcome focused, right? So in excellence, the outcome focus is prioritizing valuable outcomes and overall success or successes, right? Like really taking the entirety of the experience and the entirety of the results that you've achieved and or produced. And the outcome when you're perfection is focused on, fixating on perfect details, often at the expense of a broader goal. So again, you don't really accomplish anything when you're perfect. And then, if you're in this perfection mindset, John, then what you're going to be doing after that is you're going to be blaming everybody else for screwing up instead of taking responsibility for yourself. And that's another clear distinction between perfection and excellence. It's like, I'm willing to take responsibility for my results when I'm striving for excellence, whereas like everyone else is the problem because they're not perfect, but I was in my execution, whatever you want to think.
Yeah.
That was a long one, but I think that was very clear, very important to break down this distinction.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks for going through that, man.
No, my pleasure, dude.
So, I mean, this show is obviously Men Talking Mindfulness. We've touched on, meditation helping. But let's talk, mindfulness, self-compassion. What are their roles in overcoming perfectionism, and then how can someone cultivate this self-compassion, which we talk about regularly on the show. So mindfulness that allows us to sit quietly, whether that's in a meditation, whether it's in a mindful meal, whether it's just sitting quietly, reflecting, journaling. That really can help us to become more self-aware of our thoughts and behaviors. And then it can also help us to recognize that we do have these perfectionist tendencies, not just in that moment, right? Not just in that mindful moment, but you can notice it as they arise. You are being mindful of that perfectionist tendency that you have in, hey, you know what? I want to start this piano lesson, like coming back to my son. I want to start being an artist. I want to write a book. And then you're like, wow, you know what? I'll get to it someday when the stars align and when everything is perfect around me. And boom, you realize, okay, you know what? I'm being a perfectionist. Maybe I can take a step back, be mindful, and let's just get started. Let's just write 1,000 words, write 10,000 words for your book. Draw something on canvas, paint something on canvas. Start your podcast that you've been wanting to start. Whatever we have, when you start to realize that can come through being mindful by actually having a regular practice, but then also in the moment when you're experiencing that perfectionist tendency, that can be huge. What else, man?
Well, no, mindfulness, yes, from the self of like understanding the mind, your narrative, using self-reflection as a tool, to really, through mindfulness practices and journaling, to understand, your relationship to not just perfection, but like where perfection is going to show up or really begin to rear its ugly head in criticism is when you fail, and it's just like, how are you processing failure? I think, and I would also say here from an action-oriented mindfulness perspective, where are you giving yourself the opportunity to fail or to try something new in order to understand and change your relationship to failure? Right.
Like
huge, right? Really, it's what it takes. I mean, if you really want a personal growth, you really want to grow, then you must get uncomfortable. You must challenge, the way you've always done things.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you're going to change. But what, and it's a lot of the students I'm working with, John, and a lot of, whether it's in the meditation course or one-on-one or, in conferences and stuff, it's like, it's once they calm down, find their breath, right? That's kind of the way in with all of this, because that's the only way you can really objectively see, your experience and your mental and emotional experience. So when you get to calm and then you get really quiet by meditating, and then you become more aware of your kind of psychological makeup and how you're continually processing the world, right? Whether it's through the bullshit of your mind always coming up or whatever, then you begin to see that like the only way to really grow and to be happier is to step into those areas that you're not good, like that you've never really excelled or ever even tried before. And if you have another thing about excellence, John, is I have the courage and confidence because I understand that striving for excellence moves me forward, right? Whereas perfection it's a trap; it keeps you in one place.
Right.
And I'm beginning to develop resilience skills in the sense of like, and an attitude like there's nothing it's not like I'm not great at X, Y, and Z right now, but I have, because of my mindfulness practices, I have the ability to move forward effectively into something I'm not great at, but learn all along the way, the whole time, instead of, judging and criticizing myself and not doing anything new.
Right.
And wondering why fucking life feels empty,
Yeah. Because it is.
Yeah.
Because you're afraid of trying something new.
Right.
And a lot of that fear, again, is based on your perception of how others perceive you, like I mentioned before. And it's also based on how you perceive yourself. And you're beating yourself up. If you screw up, you beat yourself up. You get into this shame loop that you're not good enough. So you weren't good enough in this instance, so you won't be good enough in the future. And that's, mindfulness. Mindfulness brings you into that present moment. You're here right now. You can let go of the past, or at least acknowledge that it exists and be like, you know what? That's the past. The future, I can improve. I can strive for excellence. So that's, the mindfulness there, focusing on the present, but it also allows you to be kind to yourself when you do screw up. Like, you know what? I'm a human being. I'm a human freaking being. And we all screw up. We're all imperfect, which is, obviously you're a compassion ambassador and about that common humanity and being kind to yourself. So I think that mindfulness can help us to treat ourselves with kindness. And in doing so, we can break out, we can avoid this we can avoid it and break out of it if we're in it. So
well, the first piece of developing self-compassion is like the life vest of perfection, of the perfection trap, if you will. It'll keep you above water instead of going down and drowning, in this in this like unattainable, idealistic, trap that you're in. Well, the first piece, to really leveraging self-compassion as a tool is becoming aware, right? So, we that's the mindfulness piece. So be aware of your thoughts, be aware of the emotional things that it brings along with it. Be aware of like how neurologically it makes you behave is super important. So there's that kind of reflection mindfulness piece. And then you mentioned it earlier, we said it many times already, because it's so essential, is the common humanity. I mean, it's just the human, if we did not fail as human beings, we would not exist as a species. We'd still be, we would be hiding, that, we would just be stuck in that cave, and then we just starve ourselves to death, because we refused to go out. And I don't know, it's a mess. I wonder how much people back like in the Stone Ages or when we were having more of a humble experience because of how the humility that the universe or the world brought us, because we're always being like God, like we're fighting for survival every day. It's like, I don't know how much perfection existed back then. Perfection seems like a thing, like it seems like, a 21st century or 20th century thing, because it's like we didn't have to suffer as much. I don't know, I'm just making stuff up right now, but I'm just feeling it. But I don't know. I mean, but this is what I'm processing right now in real time, John, and I'm not giving a shit what it sounds like, okay? Right? But it's just like, it seems like a luxury perfection in some way, to do that, or to live that way. Whereas like, if you're really suffering, it'd be like, I just got to survive, bro. Yeah. And I don't know what it's going to look like necessarily. But anyway, okay. There's my little, so I'm on the soapbox.
I love it.
Standing on a box of Tide.
That's right. Anyway, so I've quoted this piece before too. It's kind of funny, but it's from a cartoon movie called The Croods. And if you're not familiar with The Croods, it's this family that at the beginning of the movie, they are all living in a cave. And the father, his goal is to provide and protect. And he believes that his goal is to keep the family alive at all costs. And he keeps them in this cave, won't let them out of the cave. And the daughter, being very adventurous, she wants to leave the cave. And the dad says, I keep you in that cave to keep you alive. And she says, that's not living. That's just not dying. And that's what I think so many of us get into this loop on is, it might not be as drastic as death, but we have this fear of again, being seen in a certain way. And that might be even worse than death to some of us, being perceived poorly, being perceived as imperfect. And in embracing mindfulness, we can acknowledge that, one, these are our thoughts and feelings that we're having, but we also can acknowledge that most of the time what we think other people are thinking, they're not, right? So we can really take a step back and say, okay, this is who I am. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm experiencing. I'm not going to judge it in the here and now, but I'm also looking around and seeing all these other people, and I'm believing they think this. And sorry, y'all, I'm using my hands a lot, but you can't see it. I'm believing.
I can, John.
They all think this, but really they don't. So I think that's a piece of living that life, and rather not just living a life to not die, or rather not just living a life to not be made fun of, or to live a life to where you never fail. That's not a life. That's just not failing. That's not a life. That's just not being perfect.
Trying.
Right. That's not trying. Yeah.
It's not taking a risk. It's not no life there at all. Yeah. There's none. I mean, it's just like Shawshank Redemption. Get busy living or get busy dying. Yeah. And it's true. It was my favorite quotes of all. I love that. I was like, whoa, you try to make a difference in your life and in this world, right? Or just get busy dying, whatever, that's, could be, that's a harsh statement, but that's a quote. And I think it really sticks. It's very, well, let's just close this loop on self-compassion, because the other part of self-compassion is, you mentioned kindness earlier. So being kinder to yourself, but also mentoring yourself. So this is where a therapist can help you. This is where, other stuff we're doing can help you. This is how self-compassion can help you, because you can start to change and make a different create a different conversation with yourself, where you're inspiring and motivating yourself, with the results that you have, tied to common humanity, understanding and trying not to attach to that negative thinking that comes with the perfection trap, and beginning to speak to yourself in a way and act in a way that is aligned with human beings, where we're always going to be fucking up.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how it goes,
Yeah.
Yeah, John, I think we did it. I don't know. What are we missing? I think we really nailed all this.
I think the last stuff that we have here is, is it possible to have a healthier approach to perfection? But I think we've covered a lot of that. We're just beating a dead horse. So this is when we realize that we are at a perfect stopping point.
So. Yeah, well, I want to say one thing. I don't want to leave David out of this. And David was a recovering perfectionist, and his wonderful wife, Karen, this is the obsessive nature of perfection. He would buy, what does he say here? He goes, perfection is an attempt to reach key things in living. So he had not having everything I wanted when I was growing up. Nike. So he would have Nikes instead of, he would have Payless shoes, Air Jordans instead of the actual Nikes, and followed me into my teenage years and into my adulthood. So once I was able to afford nicer things, I would buy them and then put them away so they wouldn't get scuffed up or scratched or damaged or torn. So again, he's torturing his shoes, keeping them in his cave of his closet, right? Unwilling to take them out because he's afraid they're going to be, but he bought them to wear them, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, he bought them to prove to himself that he was important. He bought them to prove
there you
to
go.
himself
Fill that
was
void
worthy.
a little bit, right?
Yeah, validate it. Yeah, I mean, I've been there. I grew up. I grew up comfortable, but I remember having the shoes that weren't name brand, or the stuff that wasn't in style. And believe me, I'm not saying that I had a rough childhood in that respect at all. My parents were fantastic, right. But I remember the first time I bought myself a pair of Nikes, and it was the Andre Agassi, the tennis player, his ones, man. And I thought I was the freaking heat wearing these things around. That's probably another thing that led to my desire to be perfect, was I got recognized in my school. I was, ninth grade or whatever, and walking around in these sweet Andre Agassi Nikes, and people are like, "Oh man, I like your shoes." And I was like, "Yeah, what's up? I'm perfect."
Yeah, exactly.
It's just exacerbated the problem. So I get you, David. I get it, man.
Yeah. Well, let me just, I'm going to finish with this, the rest of what David had written here. And David, in case you're unfamiliar, he did our divorce episode with us. So thank you for contributing once again, David, and just being such an amazing advisor to the show. And he says, to finish this, he goes, "A very amazing woman named Karen taught me that nice things are meant to be enjoyed and loved, not put away in a box to keep them perfect," quote. Letting go of perfectionism, mostly, of course, has allowed me to live more joyful and fulfilling life. It has also allowed me to be more compassionate and empathetic to others, because when you feel criticized or are hyper-focused on perfection, you are equally criticizing of others.
Oh, wow.
So, So there's our wisdom of David once again showing up on our show. And thank you for everyone who's helped us to, get these questions or bring these questions to us. And it really helped us to shape the show. John, this has been a lot of fun, man. I think we really we did a good job today. If I could pat myself on the back. We were fucking perfect, John.
We were perfect.
We were fucking
perfect. Well, we were definitely making progress. So, hey, let's wrap it up with a final practice, a final perfect practice, and then we'll call it a day. But before we do that, hey, thank you for tuning in. Please help us. And I see Will's got another point to make here. So let me just wrap
No, not a point, but go ahead. Yeah, just keep going.
So, hey, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in on video. Thanks for tuning in on audio. Thanks for your support as a sponsor. You can also support the show as a listener now. Check the notes below to get that listener support link. And we just appreciate you guys as our community and our growing community. So that's all I got. Will.
Yeah, and all I want to say is, hey, one thing that could help you get out of the perfection trap is learning the practice of meditation. We have these 2 opportunities coming up in the fall. One is going to be on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock starting in September, 6 o'clock Eastern time. The other one is going to be probably more accessible maybe for some people internationally because it's going to be 10 a.m. on Sundays, 9 straight weeks. We're going to be, learning to calm down. We're going to be learning about impermanence. We're going to be learning about self-compassion and meta meditation, loving kindness, learning breathing practices. So it's really been an honor to teach this course. I'm excited to do it with another group of people. So I just want to mention that out there. But John, you want to do our closing practice?
Sure thing, man. Sure thing. So again, like we started at the beginning of this episode, let's look at ourselves, our perfect selves. Yes, ironically, with all our imperfections, we are perfect, just like this, just right here, right now. And then if you're comfortable doing so, go ahead and close your eyes and bring your attention to that perfect self. And scan your body starting at your feet, noticing the perfect imperfections there. The cracks, the scars, the imbalances, scanning up from your feet all the way through your legs, the marks that you may have, scanning up into your abdominals and lower back, all the way up to your chest and upper back. And while you're here, just pause for a moment on your chest and upper back and see if you can feel your heart beating. And even there, as imperfect as it may seem, it is perfectly imperfect. It is exactly where it is meant to be, and it's doing exactly what it's meant to do right here, right now. Let's scan down our arms, down each arm, left and right, starting at the shoulders, down to the elbows, all the way down to our tips, the tips of our fingertips, tips of our fingers, rather. Even this meditation is imperfect. Scanning back up from the tips of your fingers, coming back up your arms to your shoulders and neck, and scanning all the way up to the very crown of your head, and noticing yourself, your whole self. Again, realizing that we are all imperfect, but we are exactly where we need to be, doing exactly what we need to be doing right here, right now. And if we can give ourselves grace and love and kindness, we can be perfect. And now let's wrap it up with one deep cleansing breath together. Begin by exhaling, emptying those lungs all the way, holding empty at the bottom. Nice deep breath in, filling all the way up, holding full at the top, and release. And as you release, start to bring some movement back into your body, wiggling your fingers, wiggling your toes, wiggling that perfect body, moving that perfect body around. Here we are. All right, y'all. Thank you again for being here with us today. Please, if you got something out of this episode, please share it with your friends, your family, share it far and wide. And that is all I've got. Will, over to you, brother.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, John. Leave us a review, everybody. If you want to learn about anything and everything that we're doing, head to mentalkingmindfulness.com or text MTM to 33777. Always a pleasure, John. Great to see you. And that's a wrap, bro.
That's a wrap. Until next time, everyone. Take care.
Peace. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.